In this video, we'll talk about how you can configure your project properties so that your application supports two-factor authentication. So before you can turn on two-factor authentication, you have to ensure that you have an extended user information table for your project, and also that that table has a field called other info JSON that is of type memo. If you don't yet have that table, you can go over to project properties, and then you can scroll down to extended user security info, where you can set up that table, or if you don't have one, you can basically create it. Once you have the extended user information table set up, as you can see I have it set up right here, you can then go down to two-factor authentication, and you can define the various properties that you'll need for two-factor authentication. So if you want to support SMS as a method for the user to get their authentication code, you'll need to have an account with Twilio. And once you go to Twilio and set up your account, you'll be able to get an SID code, an authorization code, and a phone number, which is the phone number that the SMS message that each user receives will come from. So you'll need to set these values. Then if you want to support email authentication, then you'll need to go. So in order to support email as an authentication method, you'll need to go and specify your email settings. So you can see, if you scroll up here, we can get to email settings. And email can be either sent using internal email or using an API like SparkPost. So you can specify which method you want to use, either internal or SparkPost. If you choose SparkPost, you're going to need to specify your API key, which you can get when you set up your SparkPost account. And if you choose the internal option, then you must specify all of these settings here for the SMTP server, the port, etc. And then you can also specify default values for the from address, which is basically who is the user who is sending the authentication email, the alias of that person. And then if you go back now to two-factor authentication, you can override the default value for send from. So this is basically the email that the user that receives with their authentication code will come from the name of the user specified here. This is the friendly name of that user. This is the subject line of that email message, so it might be something like, here is your authentication code, and then here is the actual body of the email. And you can use any text that you want in this email, as long as you include the placeholder curly bracket code, which is where the actual code number will go. And then the final authentication method is Google Authenticator, and in that case each user will need to install the Google Authenticator app on their mobile device, and they'll need to configure it. And this is basically how you configure it. So you can specify the secret. So this is basically any string that you want that must be 16 characters long. This is the name of the issuer. This is basically any name that you want with no spaces, and this is the name that will appear in the Google Authenticator app, indicating which code to use in the Google Authenticator. And then here is the message that will be displayed to the user if they enter the wrong authentication code when they are prompted for an authentication code. So once you have set up all of the project properties here for two-factor authentication, you're all set to go. And now, as long as you build your login dialog either using a UX component or using the integrated login in a tabbed UI, you're good to go. Thanks very much for watching.